Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 8 of the anime series, Fune, or The Great Passage. And this is a very interesting little twist of an episode in that apparently some time has passed, and I have to admit that I wasn't immediately perceptive of this fact. It kind of was hallmarked by Kaguya having described she and Majime as being married, that I finally started calling it into question because some earlier dialogue in the episode, in talking about how long the Great Passage, publication has been in effect, how long they've been trying to achieve this, and they said it was something like 13 years. I don't believe there was a 13-year time skip. People don't look that old, even though the characters are actually made to look slightly older, from having longer hair to lines being drawn under their eyes. Nishioka definitely stood out to me as having longer hair and a line under his eyes. Kaguya as well. But there's some dialogue in episodes previous now where I've been under the assumption that they were basically forecasting it would take 10 years from the point when Majime joined the effort for the Great Passage to become published. But now, in retrospect, when they said it's been in the works for 13 years, do I suspect that in actuality, Mr. Matsumoto, who's been overseeing this, was probably, trying to get this put forth, trying to get this completed for 10 years before Majime became involved, and now another subsequent 3 years, we jumped ahead. And that would explain why the characters look a little bit older, but not extremely older. That would explain why, Kaguya and Majime are married, as per the dialogue, and everything like that. And they are effectively welcoming in some new blood in the form of Kishibey, this, very cute, adorable, and complete nervous wreck of a girl, as sort of an assistant. I thought it was really interesting because the tables kind of turned with the passage of time. Majime is a little more forthright, a little more commanding, not so much domineering, but he's the boss. He's the chief of this effort now. He's primarily the only one working there. This completely offsets and makes her feel out of place, Kishibey, because she comes from, basically working in publishing fashion magazines and everything like that. She doesn't quite know what in the hell she's even doing there, why she was hired, why she was, kind of sacked by her former job, even though whenever she would write articles and submit them, apparently she was so focused on phraseology and definition and terminology and words that this would cause conflict with her boss in that particular framework. But these are things that made her excel when Majime was, I guess, looking around, calling around, trying to find someone to hire, because that's exactly what you need in the formatting of creating a dictionary. And so, the large majority of the episode is Kishibey really not knowing what in the hell to even do. Apart from kind of cleaning up the place, straightening up, alphabetizing notes, and all kinds of documents and everything. And she says that about feeling like a certain out of placeness, and immediately Majime is right up in her face with the notepad trying to figure out what she means by this, and she's completely shaken by that and everything, and coming up with all these different terminologies. So immediately you see, as a viewer, that, okay, these are the qualities that probably landed her this job, even though she herself can't put a thumb on it. And it's very interesting to me that Majime goes home after all of this dealing with her and really feeling like he wants to still find a way, much as, the pre-credits give us an awareness into his thinking of creating that boat to set out on the ocean waters and really find a way to bridge that gap between he and another person to be communicative, communicate with her, welcome her, make her feel at home, and not so much like she's behind enemy lines, like she says, an answer to what do you mean by out of placeness. And that's very much what he tries to do. He asks for advice from Kaguya, who has made them dinner. I'm a little concerned because the old lady, her grandmother, was nowhere to be found in that sequence. And is she just asleep upstairs? Has she passed away at this point? I don't know, but because of that passage of time thing. And she created something with asparagus or something. I forget what exactly it was, but she wants to hear his appraisal of it, and he doesn't get around to it right away until after she advises, well, why don't you have a welcoming party? And this is where she meets everyone who's been working on this project for upwards of 13 years now. That is to say, all told from its beginning, with Mr. Matsumoto, and Nishioka is there, and Majime is referring to him as the guy who only show up for drinking parties and dinner parties and things, and Nishioka is completely ticked off by that. He says, "Oh, Majime is the guy who's out of his head. You're gonna get annoyed with him," and everything like that. Kaguya, incidentally, when everyone's basically going home and Majime has stayed behind, she introduces herself as the wife, and so at that point, that was the clinchman for me, where I was like, wait a minute, how much time has actually passed here? And then seeing when Nishioka follows up with Kishibey later on, after she gets herself completely drunk because she's such a nervous wreck and doesn't know what her purpose is to fulfill in this job placement. And he catches up with her, and it's very much Nishioka, that wise sage advice that he will give, that we have seen him give to like Majime in episodes past, to allow Majime to blossom into himself and find himself. That's very much what he does for this girl. He basically is saying, well, why don't you describe to me what right means? And she goes into all of these elaborate descriptions and definitions and phraseologies. And so you see, she is so cut out for this work. It's the pitch perfect. It's like finding a female Majime, finding a Majime all over again in a lot of senses. And I love that. I love that she was able to find herself. It felt like, we've already spent like 3 or 4 episodes with this character by the end of this episode, not to say in any way that the pacing was monotonous at all. It felt very refreshing. It felt like everything had a very natural flow to it. But I'm glad that she was able to find herself by the episode's end already enough to actually approach Majime and say, instead of just neatening up the office, instead of just cataloging and characterizing all these words and alphabetizing them and getting the shelves, all neatened up and everything like that, can I actually look into all of the fashion terminologies and words and definitions and all that kind of stuff, because there are certain words that the definitions are a little bit outdated. There are other brand new words that haven't even been included at this juncture. Could this be something I focus on in the producing of this great passage dictionary? And so she thoroughly became forthright in her own right. Again, it felt like episodes that we've spent with her, she is such a warming and welcomed character by the end that it's just like, wow, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, again, she's adorable. She was a nervous wreck, but she found herself by the end. And it's kind of paralleled in the whole aspect of when they have the cat come in with the sort of template version of what the Great Passage will be when it's finally published, and they're going through feeling the paper on their fingers, and Majime's like, no, this is kind of a problem. The paper doesn't have the stickiness you would need for its consistency and everything like that, and it needs to be fixed. And the guy eventually said, well, we'll go back to square one and try to create a better paper for it. He created this paper out of the blue, which is astounding. I was kind of astounded by that, much as Kishibey was. But it's kind of great parallel that, because here is this brand new template, version of the book. Here is this brand new girl, and there's something internally wrong with it. There's something internally offset with it, much as there is within her own mind as far as why she's even here. And with this guy, basically taking the templated book back and saying, okay, we'll get back to work on it. It's very much trying to find the most, adequate published version that you can have of this book. And it's very much the very sort of formatted to mindset that she goes through to find the best version of herself by the end, to make that request, to say, hey, can I please work on some of these terminologies? I mean, she comes from a background in fashion magazine publication anyway, so it's pitch perfect. I really warmed to her character from the outset. The way she's quirky, the way she's moving around. I will say, I did have a minor gripe with certain animated sequences. There's a point where just before she says that out of placeness dialogue, where the animation kind of looks choppy just a little bit with her movements and everything. And it made me wonder if they were trying to almost give it a rotoscoped effect, where they were trying to have a level of realism in her movements and things like that, because she is the new blood, she is the younger character, she's more vivacious, and there's more momentum to her. Maybe they were trying to emphasize this in contrast to the lack of movement in like Majime, who's just stuck behind his desk. He's got a new desk all the way at the back of the office, now, and everything. So it's like really interesting that. And that choppiness did make me wonder, but then consequently, do we see when Nishioka ends up texting Majime that, hey, you found a good newbie here, his thumb and finger movements move with such fast-paced fluidity, there was like no choppiness, so I really don't know. It could just be a minor gripe on my part. Don't know if anyone else would have caught that. But yeah, another fantastic episode in this series. I have to admit to being surprised to this new blood being an addition to the show, to the cast, but she's very warmly welcomed by me, and the time skip was kind of unexpected as well. But, I did expect that there would have to be some level of skipping ahead. And so we see, that is what has happened, and I just can't wait to see where we go from here. So, yeah, otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.